Hello friends, I am Chevee. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? I hope it's fantastic. It is almost a beautiful day here today. It's currently about 70 degrees, which is, you know, I love, but it's raining and thunderstorms and all that sort of stuff. We're supposed to have a softball game tonight. My youngest is playing softball again this year, and I don't know that that's going to happen, but whatever. The sad part for me is that I like to get my bike out when it's, by bike I mean motorcycle, when the weather's nice, but I can't I could, but I don't ride in the rain anymore. Not on purpose. If it rains on me while I'm riding, so be it, but I don't ride in the rain on purpose. There was a time for about a year when all I had was a motorcycle, and I just sucked it up and rode and when it got wet. No big deal. That being all said, that's all that being said, whatever. Chris suggested a topic yesterday about motorcycles, so let's talk about motorcycles some more. And his question was, I know you got a Harley style cruiser. Yes, I have a 2003 Suzuki Volusia VL800. It is a cruiser style bike, and it is a smaller engine than it's smaller than normal. It's a 800. I think that most cruiser style bikes are going to be more like 1200s. So it's a little, I don't want to say it's underpowered because it's absolutely not. It's a smaller engine than most of these style of bikes would have. But anyway, I've had that bike now for, I believe this is 10 years. Pretty sure it's 10 years. And I'm never going to get rid of it. It's my favorite bike I've ever owned. And so that leads into Chris's other questions. Do you have experience on any other style motorcycles? Do you wish you had any other styles to complement the one you've got? He mentions he had a '06 GSX-R, which is the leader, a huge bike. They're massive, massively overpowered, like a track bike. He had a Husqvarna Thumper, which are these little single cylinder bikes. They're pretty cool. 600cc street bikes, an '05 Harley Night Train, such and such. So he's been looking for something. He hasn't had a bike in a while. He's looking for something to get. But he's curious to know if I've had anything else. Yeah, I have had a lot of experience on bikes. The first two-wheeled motored vehicle I rode was, we still have it. It's a scooter that my dad made when he was teaching welding, I believe. He he found plans to make a tube steel frame and put a gas engine in it from a lawnmower. And so he built that, and they used wheelbarrow tires, like wheels and tires, but it has handlebars, it has a brake, all that sort of stuff. And I started riding that when I was little, probably 10-ish is when he had it sitting in storage for a long time. We got it out, reconditioned it, got it working again. And then I rode that from the time I was 10 until I moved out, basically. I used to ride it around the house. When I got a little older, he would let me take it up and down the street. That was, I believe, the bike that cemented my love of motorcycling. My dad was always a car guy, had classic cars, we did car shows, all that sort of stuff. I never cared. I wanted a motorcycle. From the day I jumped on that thing and rode it, I wanted a motorcycle. So that was my first experience riding. My first experience owning a bike, I had a 50cc Yamaha Raz moped. I bought that for, I believe, $75 from a girl in the barracks in Hawaii. I needed a form of transportation. Mopeds are perfect in Hawaii because there's never bad weather. You just get on it and go anytime, any day. I'm 6'4". I was 6'4" then, and a Yamaha 50cc moped is made for 5-foot small Asian people, and I looked absolutely ridiculous on that bike. But it got me around that island for years. I rode it for all 3 years I was there. It got stolen the last year I was there. And it got something like 80 miles to the gallon. I barely ever put anything in it. Just rode the hell out of that thing. Loved it. I also there owned a Suzuki. I forget what it was called. It was the GS series at that. It was an 82 or 83 Suzuki GS 400. It was actually a pretty decently sized bike. Like it was kind of, I mean, it was a pretty big bike. It had that flat bench seat that those '80s bikes had. All those '80s style Asian bikes were all the same. They had like that flat bench seat. It was a pretty tall bike, which has been the main factor for me riding is my size. I do have experience on street bikes. I had a Ninja 250 for a little while, which is a hilariously small bike for me. I've ridden a Friends GSXR leader bike. I have ridden Sportsters, Harley Sportsters. I had a Harley Electroglide. I had a Honda Shadow. I mean, not a Shadow, a Honda Dream, one of those old school cafe racer style bikes. I had another Suzuki four-cylinder, I think it was. I think it was a... Oh, that's right. The one that I had in Hawaii was a 250, a two-cylinder bike. I had a 450, which was their four-cylinder version for a while. So I've ridden lots of things. The thing for me is street bikes, I'm too big. My knees don't fit in the recess in the tank recess. If you've ever seen like a street bike has these cutouts where your knees rest, my knees always come up over those, even on the bigger bikes, and they're much harder to move the pedals backwards on a bike because of linkages and stuff. So it's very difficult for me to sit on one of those for any length of time. Also, I have bad knees. My right knee, particularly, I got hurt in the military, and so if I keep my leg bent for a long time, it hurts really bad. So the nice thing about having a cruiser bike is I can just straighten my legs out and rest my legs on my pegs and ride without hurting at all. I can ride my bike for hours. I can ride it until the tank gets empty, which is a long way. 150 miles, however long that. So a couple of hours riding without needing to stop, no problem. On a street bike, it starts hurting within minutes. Like it hurts. So I do not necessarily have, to answer your question, I don't necessarily covet another style of bike. If I were to look into one of the other styles, like the touring, I don't remember what they're called, like those like motocross touring, like sit upright bikes with the hard panniers and off-road tires, those things, whatever those are, I would like to try one. I've never ridden one. I think it would be really fun to have a dual purpose on-road, off-road style bike where I could go do trails. There's a lot of trails around here. I used to ride Jeep trails a lot, and I know a lot of good places where it would be really fun to take one of those bikes. So I might try one of those someday if I can find somebody to let me borrow or rent one. But it's all going to come down to my leg comfort is the main problem that I have. So yeah, I mean, I've ridden a little bit of everything. But this 800, this is the first shaft drive bike I've ridden. Most bikes, the rear wheel, not most. American bikes, the rear wheel is driven by a chain, and in older bikes, the rear wheel is driven by a chain. This bike has a drive shaft, just like your car, a hard shaft that links, and there's a differential in the rear. This is the first shaft bike I've driven. Before this bike, I had a 72 Harley Electroglide, and it was, of course, an air-cooled Harley shovel head, and I did not like it at all. I really did not like that bike. I did not like how hot they get. Which I should have known. I had a Sportster. They get really, really hot. And around here, I'm not doing a lot of cruising riding. There's not a lot of places to cruise around here. I mean, there are if you're, like, I'm going to go on a cruising day. But to just ride around town and sit at a stoplight and let my legs catch on fire because the engine is 4,000 degrees, I don't want that. I've never wanted that. So this thing is water cooled, shaft drive. I swapped the rear end out. The rear end that came with this bike was geared like a dirt bike, super, super low geared. And it just like jerked when you shifted out of from a stop. I found guys online that would modify a rear end out of the Marauder version of this bike, which is like an 1100 or maybe it's a 1200. Take that rear end, modify it slightly, get a new drive shaft, put it on this bike. After that, this bike was absolutely perfect. I can cruise, before on the interstate with that low gearing at 70 miles an hour, the bike was like 4,000 RPMs. Now I'm at 80 and in 2,000, it's real comfortable. It's not vibrating me to death. The water cooled engine is amazing. It's just a perfect bike. It's the right size for me. I mean, it's bigger than my Electroglide. My Electroglide felt small compared to this, but also the seat's lower, so I don't feel like I'm climbing onto it. I'm more just settling into it. Absolutely a perfect bike, and I have no reason to want to get rid of it ever. I'm going to keep it running for as long as I can. So thank you for the questions, Chris. I really appreciate when we get some like back and forth like that, where you can ask me questions, and I really appreciate it because it helps me just be like, cool, I've got something to talk about. So if anybody else, or even Chris again, has other questions that you want to ask about my life or your life or in general, let me know in the comments. Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends and wonderful people. I really appreciate you. And I'll see you again tomorrow. Today's word you should know to sound smart is propriety. It is a noun meaning behaving in a way that conforms to the manners and morals of polite society. Propriety is at least of all laws and the most observed. Francois de la Rochefoucauld, a French author. Propriety. Propriety. I thought I knew that word, but I guess I didn't. I know I've definitely read it and assumed I knew what it meant, but I think I had a different, maybe I was thinking proprietary. I don't know.